I am Claudio DeMarco. I'm the cameraman. Mike Del Piano is the interviewer. We are interviewing Philip J. Howlett at Roam Free Academy on 11/9/04.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Michael Del Piano. Would you like to tell us your full name and the branch of service that you were in?
Yes, my full name is Philip D. Howlett, and I was in the United States Army in the Korean War.
Were you drafted into the war, or did you enlist?
Yes. I was in college when the war started, and I had to take an exam each year until I graduated to remain eligible to be in college instead of being drafted. And when I graduated, they got me.
So you were trying to avoid going to war if you...
I wanted to finish my college education.
Are you happy that you were able to finish your college education first before going, so that you were able to become an officer?
Oh yes, oh yes.
Because that makes a big difference. Are you happy that you were an officer and not an enlisted man?
No, it cost me an extra year in the service, quite frankly.
When did your service start?
December '52.
Where was your training?
I went to Fort Dix, New Jersey, and I had more training than Carter had little liver pills. I had 8 weeks of basic, 8 weeks of heavy weapons, and while waiting to go to officers candidate school, they put me in something called leadership school for 8 weeks. The pseudonym for leadership school was La-di-da school. But the top 3 in each graduating class got a PFC stripe. Looked good on my arm.
Did you feel that your training prepared you well for what you encountered in Korea?
No, nothing prepares you well for combat, let me tell you. You're scared every minute.
When were you sent to Korea?
In fairly early 53. And thank heavens that the armistice was in July, so I was only in combat 4 months.
What was the nature of your assignment when you arrived in Korea?
You know, all the time and all the training I had, most of the time I was in supply. And during the war months, I was providing the front lines with supplies.
What type of supplies did you deliver, like artillery?
Oh, ammunition.
Ammunition?
Ammunition and food products.
So you were an important person out there. Did you get a lot of respect from the other officers and other enlisted men for the fact that you took care of them and brought them everything that they needed?
No, we got
to fight?
yelled at a lot for being late. What happened is, if the front lines moved and made a push, they leave the Chinese in the bunkers behind. So when we would come along with our convoys, they're shooting at us. So we had percussion grenades, and they were, do you know what a bunker is?
Yes.
They were firing slits out of them, and they were pretty limited. So you took a percussion grenade and came in from the side and just threw the percussion grenade in the bunker. And in an enclosed area like that, right out their ears. It was really a lot of fun.
How were your superior officers? How did they treat you?
You know, very seldomly was I in contact with a real superior officer. There was a supply depot officer, but he delegated, and most of the time I was dealing with enlisted men.
What were the enlisted men like? Were they respectful? Did they seem like they wanted to be there?
Nobody wanted to be there, but as long as they were there, they were hellishly good soldiers.
So it wasn't a type of feeling like it was in World War II to be in Korea? It wasn't...
Well, stop and think. In World War II, Japan attacked us. Germany declared war on us. Italy declared war on us. I mean, what the devil? I mean, this was patriotism beyond. In Korea, Truman just sent American troops to stop the aggression of North Korea to South Korea. Entirely different situation. Entirely.
What type of equipment did you receive when you arrived in Korea?
Well, I didn't have to carry an M1, the 9-pound rifle, because they assigned me a carbine, which is a much smaller rifle. And with a banana clip, and you turn it sideways, you could cut a tree right in two with it. It was a beautiful little weapon. And of course a .45.
Did you feel that this equipment was sufficient for your duties and what you had to do?
Yeah, I didn't have to dig a foxhole with either one of them, so yeah, it was all right.
If it was available, when it was available, what did you do in your free time in Korea?
There was no free time. Even after the armistice, it was a 7-day work day, or work week, rather. They had movies that you could go to, and after I was assigned in Seoul, the capital, you could go to a PX at the 8th Army compound. That was about all that. We even had a dance or two, where we invited all the Korean girls to come in and dance with us. Kind of.
What's a PX?
Post exchange. That's where you can buy, you know, shaving cream and da-da. And guys, you got to remember, back in the 50s, you could get a carton of Camels at the PX for $1. Cigarettes were 10 cents a pack. You could buy a quart of Canadian Club whiskey for $1 at the PX. So you know what everybody was doing over there.
Did any entertainers from the United States come over while you were there?
Debbie Reynolds.
How was that?
I was right in the 3rd row. She got into a verbal exchange with some of the, well, New York City boys who were really quick, and they really got to her. And it was kind of fun to watch her lose her cool.
What kind of act does Debbie Reynolds do? What kind of act did Debbie Reynolds do?
Oh, she sang and danced.
She sang and danced.
Yeah, yeah. She was a good-looking head, too.
How was the food while you were in Korea?
During K rations until combat was over, and then it took about 4 months before a real meal started coming through.
Did you ever go and eat the Korean food while you were over there, or did you?
Indigenous food was taboo, but when I was in Seoul after the armistice at the press billets where all the UPS, INS, UP, all the newspaper people were, it was an old Japanese hotel and it actually had flushing toilets. I had a mamazan that cleaned my room, and I used to send her out for Korean fruit called a bear, which was an apple, but they call it a pear, I don't know why. That were delicious. I ate that.
Did you eat a lot of those? Did you eat a lot of those?
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was like a luxury item?
Oh sure, it was
You while you were over
fruit.
there?
It was fruit, fresh fruit.
There wasn't much fruit in the K ration for you guys?
There's no fruit
No
in the
fruit.
K ration.
No fruit?
everything is processed.
Were you ever in combat situation?
Oh yeah, when we were on the lines, there once in a while the Chinese would throw a charge at us, and that was really eerie because, you know, they had no electronic communications and everything was by bugle, and we would put huge rolls of barbed wire in front of the lines, and the Chinese, you'd hear the bugles and they would come running over the hill, and the first 6-8 rows of them had no weapons at all. Their duty was to, on the barbed wire, so that they would be a bridge for the people who had their weapons to come through.
What was your reaction to that?
Run like hell.
Could you understand why people were just killing themselves for that? To be
You mean the Chinese?
Yeah.
Well, yes, yeah, you can understand that because a Chinese soldier got no pay at all. But at least he got 3 meals a day. And once a month they had a ration of hashish. And it was a lot better than being back in the rice paddies in China, because at least they were eating and they were warm. They had clothes.
So was there a lot of drug use by the Chinese soldiers
Well,
when they were allowed to have it?
yeah, that was part of their ration.
What type of weapons were you issued during combat?
Well, I had my carbine, my M1 carbine and my .45 pistol.
What kind of weapons did the Chinese have while they were coming after you?
Most Chinese soldiers carried what they called a burp gun. You couldn't hit the side of a barn with it, but it threw about insurmountable numbers of bullets at you. All over the. It was a submachine gun, is what it was.
Did you ever have experience having grenades thrown at you or anything like
Just
that?
once.
When you were there?
Just once. The one came out of a bunker once when we were sneaking up with a percussion grenade, and that scared the hell out of it.
When they came to attack you, did they try to do like guerrilla warfare, or did they come up in a conventional way to try to fight you guys?
No, actually, it was like Pickett's charge at Gettysburg. They were just. There were thousands of them. You can imagine what it was like. I never saw a North Korean soldier while I was there. All I saw were Chinese. And of course, if President Truman had allowed MacArthur was up at the 38th parallel.
Mm-hmm.
He had driven the North Koreans. He had beaten the North Koreans, and he wanted to attack China at that time, the communists in China, and he would have beaten them easily. But Truman, of course, replaced him and put General Maxwell in, and we weren't to go into China at all.
So, did you prefer MacArthur or Maxwell?
Oh, MacArthur was a man. Maxwell might have been, but he was under strict muzzling by Truman, so.
Did you feel that you should have gone into China and ousted the communist regime in China?
Me going to China, I wouldn't want to have, but I think we should have taken China right then and we wouldn't have any problem with them today.
Were you able to identify the situation that the enemy was in while you were there?
No, not really. Everything is so confusing, you don't, no, I wasn't.
Did you ever, so you never saw a North Korean soldier, so you never engaged in warfare with the North Koreans?
No, it was always
with the
Chinese, yeah.
What type of medals did you receive?
Oh Lord, you know, the usual rinky-dink things. Korean defense thing, on and on. I got 4 or 5 medals, and they're all rinky-dinks.
How were you treated by the civilians in Korea while you were there? Were they hostile to you? And your convoys?
I don't think in the 14 months that I was in Korea that I had any conversations with any male adult Koreans other than the people that were working for me in the motor pool or the supply room or something like that. My best friend was my Mamazan, who cleaned my room and polished my shoes and everything. And this was a college graduate whose husband had been a captain in the South Korean Army and killed. And she had 4 children, and she was just keeping things together by working as a maid, really. And Missy Soong was my best friend I had over there, and she taught me a lot of Korean. I can still speak a great deal of Korean. Most of it was swearing at first, but now I can almost carry on a conversation. When we had pictures taken at Stroud Junior High, there was a Korean photographer that came from Syracuse every year, and we used to get into wonderful swearing matches back and forth. And he always brought good-looking women with him. And I asked him in Korean, yes. Well, anyway, that's enough.
How many people worked under you while you were in Korea?
Well, our supply convoy had 57 men in it, and there were 2 officers, and the rest, staff sergeant ran on down through the PFCs, and E1s, which had no stripes.
Was there anything that was particularly interesting to you about Korea, the people there, or the way that they fought, or anything of that nature?
There are some ironies here, because the South Korean Army, if there were a division of GIs and a South Korean division on a line, if you were the GIs, you better put people back here, because quite often during the night, those South Koreans used to desert and go back, and you would be holes in the line. I found that the South Koreans were not good soldiers, and it was very ironic to hear that the battalions they sent to Vietnam were really tigers and fought like crazy, so they learned.
You consider the South Koreans to be cowardly in their fighting?
During the war, yes.
Were the Chinese and the North Koreans seem more passionate about
I don't
the
know
war?
about the North Koreans, but the Chinese did anything they were told.
Who's the person that you remember the most from your time in the war?
His name was Mike Murphy, and he was a sergeant.
Why do you remember him so well?
He was a man, a real man, and he always wanted to go in the bunkers after we'd thrown the percussion grenade in to make sure that everyone was dead. And he used to stitch MM in each carcass in there to make sure they were dead. And we still, well, we get together once or twice a year. He's in New Jersey.
Mm-hmm. When you came, when you left the United States and were sent to Korea, what did you leave behind in the United States?
Well, ironically enough, when I knew I was going to go to Korea, I almost immediately got married. And so I left a wife behind.
Was that difficult for you to leave your wife behind?
Yes.
What did you do when you were discharged from the service?
Shall I? Actually, I got out 3 months early. They determined that anyone who had seasonal employment was eligible to get out at least 90 days early. So I wrote to Syracuse University, Colgate University, and the University of San Francisco, and had my records from Hartwick sent to them to enroll in graduate school. And again, another irony. On Tuesday, Colgate, I got a letter from Colgate accepting me as a student, a graduate student. On Wednesday, Syracuse, but I had already run down to personnel and applied for an early out based on my graduate school, which was seasonal occupation. And I went to Colgate and got my master's degree.
Did any other guys you know do the same thing you did?
Oh Lord, we were all doing it, yeah. But you got to remember, when we were drafted, 51% of our basic training group were college graduates. Everybody took the exams to be exempt so they could finish their college degree. Everyone, well, many of them.
What job did you do after you finished?
After I finished Colgate? Well, first of all, I was a preceptor at Colgate. They called me in after I got back to the States, and they had a preceptorial program where there were 15 of us, and each of us had 25 freshmen that we looked out for each of the 2 years of the program. And this was both educationally and socially. So the big push was for all 25 to go on into the sophomore year. And we all were in competition to see which ones could get the most of the 25 in the group. And it was a 2-year program. And they paid you for this. They paid you, and it was free tuition. So I had my GI Bill, free tuition, and they paid me to be a preceptor for 2 years there. I had more liquid cash than I've ever had in my life while I was going to Colgate for those 2 years. After I got out of Colgate, Rome Free Academy, 1957.
Did being in the military and living the life of structured discipline help you in working as a teacher?
Well, my father was a teacher at Morrisville College. I'm the youngest of 9. Not bad for Methodists.
That's a couple.
I have known nothing but discipline my entire life, believe me. And I'll fess up too. When I was in Korea, I probably didn't think I was going to make it. I didn't think I was going to come back anyway. So when I got through all this and everything, I mean, all I've done is have a good time since, believe me.
Did you hear stories about some people you knew not coming back? Is that why you were afraid you would?
Hey, we had people killed all along. Of the 57 men, we had 15 die in 4 months. I mean, when you're fired upon, when you're in a convoy heading for the lines, somebody's going to get hit. I, of course, never got hit because I dug the fastest foxholes through solid rock you ever saw in your life because I was scared.
Is that the common feeling amongst
everybody? Was scared, and everybody knew they were going to get it anyway, so when they didn't, boy, we had fun.
Looking back on the war, what influence did it have on the rest of your life besides just being thankful?
I was thankful I survived, and I was also thankful that I was able to do something that we stopped North Korea from taking over South Korea, and that made me feel good.
Do you still keep in touch with the people you served with?
Oh, Mike, yeah, I'm Mike and Wayne Dodge, a couple, we get together every now and then. We don't have any outfits. My brother was on the USS Van Valkenburg in the South Pacific during World War II, and they have these big reunions every year. Big reunions then. Now, of course, at their age, it's shrinking every year. But no, our units never really got together on a reunion. It's just Wayne Dodge lives in Schenectady, and Mike Murphy lives in New Jersey, in Piscataway. So they're close enough. So we always get together.
Do you have any advice for those of us who might be drafted or sent to Iraq?
You're never going to be drafted. I guarantee you, you will never be drafted. All Army is going to be, all military is going to be volunteers or guard units. You'll never get drafted. If you want to go into the military, it's a good life now.
Do you have any advice for anybody who's thinking about going into the military?
That it's a good life.
Good life?
Yeah.
Looking back on it now, what's the thing about your service that you're most proud of?
Survival. I made it, baby. I made it.
Well, Mr. Howlett, thank you for your interview.
That's it.